What we want to do tonight, as Paul was saying, is relay to you what a collective version of thoughts is on how the project can go forward in a healthy, cost-saving way, and still do some very, very favorable things with the material, so that we'll be better off after the project than we were before the project. And as Paul said, we have met with the court director, and they've seen all of these points. But what I want to do is just go through this. We've kind of broken it up into 4 or 5 parts here. What we're really trying to do as a foundation that directed toward this project is to first and probably foremost is to establish an interagency coordination team early in the project's life, like now. And what that does is provides a vehicle for the public to have input and oversight on the project along with the agencies, the governmental agencies. We have something that they don't have, and that is an in-depth personal knowledge of how the bay operates. Some of its hydraulic features and characteristics, where its sensitive spots are and where its really needy spots are. The Corps does not know this bay the way many of us here in this room know it. We've grown up with this bay. I rode ships with my father in the 1960s when the first part of the channel was finished and the first ship came across the bar. We also want to discuss the placement of dredge material here, and maybe offer some things for the Corps to think about that they haven't considered yet. The Corps has a goal of using 70% of the dredge material in a beneficial manner. They also have the objective of doing this project in the least cost effective method. That is a subjective term, I'll admit. And what we would like to do is open some talks to discuss what that might be relative to how they conduct dredge material use. The other item down there has been around for a long time, and the Matagorda jetty problem. We'll illustrate to you how that issue has evolved physically out there at the jetties over the last few years, and then try to be mindful of other impacts that the project can have on the whole Gulf Coast reach. It might be not something that you would obviously think about, but when we dig a channel down here in Calhoun County, it impacts the flow of water as far north as Galveston, as far south as Port Mansfield, Corpus Christi. And we'll talk just a minute about that. The ICT that we just mentioned, Interagency Coordination Team, is very important, and we need to have one established. This has been mentioned in court comments. It needs to happen early. And this is not just something that we dreamed up for this project. It's something that's been used in Corpus Christi, on the Corpus Christi Ship Channel, and it has been widely used in the Houston area when they started their Deepening the Waddy project back in mid-90s. It's just a way to make sure that you're getting input from everybody who uses the waterway. Open bay disposal is mentioned in the project. Open bay disposal is, in my view, not a good thing. Putting open disposal of dredge material in the bay and not confining it is inviting ourselves to let that material, and it spreads. I will show you some evidence of that fact. But leaving that out there, it spreads, and in some cases winds up right back in the channel. but it does flow and it moves around. Okay. This slide is about 2 years old, so this video is 2 years old. I shot it one morning when we were out fishing. This is right off Indian Point, and there's a maintenance dredging project, and they're dumping on the west side of the Matagorda ship channel. You can see one of the state markers right out there. The dredge is over in the channel. That is maintenance dredge material, which is much more fluid than new work material. It flows easily, goes all over the place, and whatever's below there for several hundred yards gets covered up. And in my way of thinking, and I believe there are many who will agree, that is unacceptable anymore.
We were supposed to stop that in the 80s.
Well, I'm just telling you, that one of the fundamentals of our comments, open bay disposal is unacceptable, period. It's just not a way to do business. Now, I'm going to show you some other evidence that causes me to say that. Let me see. Other ship channels confine dredge material so it doesn't spread. This is a concept on the Houston Ship Channel that's been in service for quite a while now. And we'll show you a few pictures. It's nothing new. It is more expensive than open bay disposal, if you just consider the cost right now. If you consider the cost of the project over its life, I'm not sure that it is more expensive. Permanent containment is the only way we should be discussing putting any dredge material back in the bay or back in the water. It's just not something that ought to be part of the discussion. We're going to see some slides here in just a second that'll show you that. And it should also include maintenance dredging, especially maintenance dredging. What you just saw coming out of that dredge effluent pipe was maintenance material. It's like tapioca pudding. It goes everywhere. And we'll see some examples of other ship channels that have used confined placement material exclusively. Beneficial use, in keeping with the Corps' goal of 70% using beneficial use, we have some suggestions here that we would like to point out to the Corps and everybody else who has an interest in this project. So here's what we got. This is a 1988 comparison of our area. 1988. It's a Google Earth. Aerial. You can get it easily. But I want you to notice a few things here. This is one of the earliest Google shots we can find. That's good. Look at this area right here, very close. That is the mercury impoundment area right there. Let's look here, and this is a very high altitude shot, but there is a lot of material around the mercury impoundment. There's a good bit of material right here at the north end of it, and there's a good bit of it down at the south end of it. Just stick that in the back of your mind. I want you to notice something else here. This is the old levee that was formed from putting dredge material out of the turning basin over in this area right here. It was newer material. It stayed pretty stable over the years. When they first dug it, we used to go out here and we'd ride motorcycles and swim in the dredge output holes. It was really we drive our cars all the way out to the end. I've driven my parents' car out here a time or two. But I want you to notice, look, there's nothing here. This is the CP&L outfall right here. It's wide open. You can run an outboard all the way through here. You get over there and fish, which was a really hot spot. Warm water coming out there. And look at, there's an old original placement area right there at the Y. You can see maybe how big it is at that point. There's some more exposed dredge material from the original channel. And if you go further down the channel, you'll see more evidence of that. Let's see. So I put, I'm trying to find the harbor refuge. You can barely see it. It's right there. We're so high altitude, but there's the harbor refuge. These areas over here, that's the causeway approach right there. And you can see you get a bit of land around that. Let's move on. There's also a spot right here that's about to erode in the Keller's Bay, but you can see what it looked like in 1988. Now we're moving to 2022. This is one of the most recent shots that you'll see. You can see the Keller's Bay land spit right there, the isthmus. It has gotten a lot narrower. Will everybody agree to that? Not as big as it used to be. It's in the process of getting cut through. There's another one further over here. Bill?
Yeah.
Your area that cut through, was it right there?
That's right there where the hole is.
Yeah, this area used to go all the way across this back. We can't see it. It's not in our earlier slide, but Bill Balboa over there is Matagorda County, runs the foundation, Matagorda Bay Foundation there. He was instrumental in putting a project in to stop the erosion right here. That's a hot spot. The other ones that I showed you earlier, remember, the mercury impoundment is right here. And there was land right back here. There was a whole lot of land right here. That's all gone. This is the shoreline where the riprap is holding back the mercury impoundment. The riprap is against the bay now. There is no cushion, there's no land protection out from that riprap now. All gone. Let's take a, that's today. That's the old one. This is today. Okay? Look at this. That is now dry land or marsh. And where it came from, there's several, I would guess there's several hundred acres right here. You cannot get to the old outflow channel anymore. It's blocked. There's land all the way around it. And where I used to drive my outboard in the wintertime to go fish over there, that's land. And it came from maintenance dredging of the turning basin and putting the material, pumping it over the levee, and they discharged it right here. It flowed all on its own and spread over this whole area. That's the material, very similar probably to the material you saw coming out of that dredge effluent, the video. That's what happens with dredge material that's not confined, especially if it's maintenance material. It just closed all of this off. This used to be really productive fishing. All of this was good. It's now gone. Harbor of Refuge, can't really tell a whole lot, but we've got some closer slides there. Let me move on a little faster here. Those are the places that are sensitive areas that we need help with. I think I've hit most of them. Indian Point is another interesting spot. Indian Point is going away, folks. And I mean really fast. If David Hall was here, he could tell us that he's had to rebuild that road at Indian Point a number of times after Harvey and other storms because it washes it out. Okay, we'll get a little more detail. We're going to put the microscope on some of these areas, okay? Harbor of Refuge. Harbor of Refuge was built back in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, as a harbor of refuge. It was intended to be a safe harbor for the vessels in this area. Back during those days, commercial fishing was really a big industry. A lot of shrimp boats here. A lot of them would come even from Palacios, big Gulf boats, towboats and barges. It was a refuge, place of refuge for hurricanes, much like the Victoria Barge Canal is today. That's the place to go in a hurricane. Well, Harbor of Refuge used to be the place to go for safety during a storm. Right now, the Harbor Refuge has got a fertilizer business there, and where the city's leasing some property to Encore right now. It's right along here. That is Helena. There's a crude oil shipping facility right here. That is the old dump ground. Pretty much all of this. There's a lot of submerged trash here. But take a look at it. That is in 1995. So it's not as old as the others, but it's getting back there. 1995, that's what it looked like. I want you to notice this area right here. And notice this area right here. Before 1995, 2022. You see any differences here and here? This area, from the time, there's an earlier view of this spoil that was put here for the dredging. It has lost 11 of 17 acres. It's less than half its original size, which is protection from the open bay impacts on this harbor. This area right here is brand new. There was nothing there. We kind of did that to ourselves a few years ago. They let someone open this, and it's now been deepened for, I think it was some kind of an aquatic project. I don't remember what the reason was. Some of you might, I don't. But it is now a major spot for breaching of the Harbor Refuge. It'll happen. You can see there's only that little place right there. Once that is breached, that Harbor Refuge is going to silt up like crazy at the mouth and on further down. It'll probably take one storm to do that. So the Harbor Refuge is a place we need help. Keller's Bay. This is a really early shot, 1989, the Keller's Bay Isthmus. You can see what it looked like there in '89. Here's what it looks like today. Not a great difference, but still it's a weak spot. And once that is breached, you know, a storm could breach it. You can see where the landowners tried to do a little bit right here to stop some of the erosion. But once that's breached, Keller's Bay is going to be probably filled with sand, at least for a good area around where the breach is. We could use some dredge material. We could follow Bill Balboa's plan of putting material out here as a barrier, kind of like a pre-barrier island, to protect that area from breaching any further. Bill actually did this over at the Cape Cronquoy area. Causeway Cove this is the name I give that area. Right now that area is one of those sites where we're not supposed to keep redfish and trout. It's a mercury sensitive area. The fish coming out of there were high enough in mercury in the early stages of that Alcoa response could cause that site to not be acceptable to retain fish. It is adjacent to some currently productive oyster reefs, but the bay bottom and the majority of that Causeway Cove is bay bottom that is not productive and it's not usable for us to harvest material. There are no oysters in the cove itself. We have some commercial fishermen here. Anybody?
Yes.
Okay. Michael? Help me if I'm not real accurate with what I'm saying.
Well, if you're referring to the cove there from the cove, Wooden Bridge,
Right there, there's a lot of, they oystered there this year, right?
No, you can see the oysters right here.
There's a lot of oysters there. And they
Yeah.
oystered there this year.
That we don't wanna mess with. But over here,
They oystered there too.
that's
How
pretty,
cold at one time, want to completely fill that in with old cauliflower
yeah.
material.
They're also doing a project over here. Well, we're not advocating covering any productive bottom, but I suspect there's some area in here that could be, remember, we're not dumping anything out in the open. That's not our recommendation at all. Wherever we put material, it's to be confined, just like this, right? Right here. That's a confined placement area. And so is this right here. But see where they're dumping the maintenance material? Everybody see that? Here's the result of it. Okay? That happened well, I know what happened since I used to go back there fishing. And that was like 1970s, so it's been a while, but it has filled up. This area right here alongside the causeway is not real visible in this site, in this slide, but you can see all of the land. There was a good bit of land out here. This thing keeps dying on me. And there was a lot of land right here, all the way out around the spit. All of that's gone. And it's up against a confined placement area right here for dredge material. That is a confined placement area. That's a mercury placement pond. They're right against their riprap right now. Dredge Island, that's what we just got done looking at. That's one of the earlier shots, 1990. 1990. There was some erosion that had taken place right here. Good bit, all this is gone now. All of this is gone. 1990, all of that's still open, guys. Nothing was there yet. Causeway, still somewhat protected. There's the oysters, you can see, that was on the that's the north wind blowing. And was probably taken at a relatively low tide during the winter. There it is again. And one suggestion we would have is to increase the buffer around the mercury impoundment area with dredge material. Put a confinement right here and put material right there. That would take care of a good bit of the turning basin and any dredging that they wanted to do right here at the harbor entrance for quite a long time. There again, you can see the oyster barrier. Don't want to mess with that at all, but that area right there is generally of very little use. Most of the trout that I catch are right in here, right where the pass goes through there and around these oyster shells. And actually, before we ran out of there, that was a good spot for trout too. No longer. You can see the growth now. This is a current slide, 2022, most current we have. But there's the material that's spread from maintenance dredging not being confined. We need to put a confinement basin around this thing and continue to use it. But the bottom's already gone, it's damaged, it's not gonna be productive for fishing. The marsh is helpful, but it's a very good place to cordon off and put dredge material. And the volume right there is huge. ES Joslin, we just got done talking about that. Again, 1990, you can see it more clearly. There's the ES Joslin outfall. That's where their outlet for their cooling water. Their intake was right in here. Their outlet is right here. And you could have run a boat right all the way in here in 1990. There it is today. This is one of the major principles for us requesting strongly that we can find dredge material. No more open bay placement. Everybody got that? North side of the causeway, it's kind of a sleeper. It's one of those areas that we haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to, but if you look at it, here's 1990, right here. That's the causeway approach. There's the old causeway that we all used to take to Lavaca back in the 60s. Until Hurricane Carla, we used to go this way. So just keep that one in mind. I'm gonna move on forward. Look what's happening. You see anything? This is barely there. It's barely there. There was a Corps of Engineers survey marker right here that was on the land. You can't see it in this picture, but it's on land right there.
Question,
That's
what are they filling in there now on that north end?
that's just fresh dirt.
I know, but how do they get away with filling the bay in?
They're doing that as an environmental project. Anybody from the port here? The port is actually doing that project, Roy. And you're talking about this area right here.
Right.
They're going to put a dike around this and put dikes within it. Michael, do you?
They're creating a wetlands.
Yeah.
As a part of the carbon neutral mitigation for the new dock.
So they're going to put a dike and it'll be open to the bay.
They're gonna be planting seagrass with the high school kids, Texas A&M Galveston.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a big marine biology.
Yeah. So it'll be an environmental asset to the bay. And the Corps is funding that. The port's funding that. So that's one point. I don't even think Tech Stock's really paid a whole lot of attention to this, but in a good storm, this right here could very easily be gone. And then we're back to the 1960s, 1970s of going to Port Lavaca with salt water spraying all over our vehicles. But this is almost at sea level. It may be about 6-7 foot. But that is an area that we could use some protection on. This area right in here is accreting. It's getting bigger. That's a closer view of the mercury impoundment. See that right there? That used to have a pretty good buffer of dirt around it, all the way down the length. This is mercury contaminated material, and this is hard surface granite riprap. Chester Island, which is right there, and this was that's a current photo. What we are advocating is that Chester Island actually, and I think the Corps is planning on doing this, but enlarge Chester Island, protect it so that it doesn't wash away. You can see right there is the old intercoastal cross right here, and you might even be able to see a little water wash right here. The ship channel goes right near that point. And the barges are maybe a little further down now, but barges cross this ship channel up this way a little bit further. And that area the current is really, really swift through there, and it's getting swifter. You can tell here, this is a current shot of the jetties. We may have a closer one here, but this right here used to be straight as an arrow and granite line. Hard riprap line. This is the throat of the landlocked portion of the Matagorda ship channel right here. And the current, as you might imagine, this is big, it's wide, and it's getting deeper, and so is this. Dave may be able to comment on what's going on with him moving the ships in and out of this throat. But it is continually getting more and more swift. The currents are unbelievable.
We're actually finding it's getting shallower than not with the jetty.
Really, out
Yeah,
here?
so
Yeah.
the current's coming in and scouring that southwest jetty, just like Raymond said.
There's something going on right here.
And it's a little deeper on the south side coming out, but the real depth and water volume's in the bottleneck up there,
Yeah.
the narrow part, Cornelius principle, right?
Yep, the Lily's principle. And, it's getting constantly worse. Now, what's really kind of neat, remember this slide, all right? Oh, wait a minute. We might have forgotten. I had another slide that showed this area right here was fixed, and Dave, it was fixed several years ago. An attempt was made to straighten it back up.
So there was a washout on, there was a washout here that was coming across the beach there. The Corps came back in and rebuilt these big granite jetties there and put some more riprap in there to keep it from washing out in here. We're finding now it's getting shoaling up here significantly, and then it shoals up significantly here.
Yeah.
And the Corps saying it's, the ebb's bringing all the sands down, and as soon as it gets out of the bay, it's
We want to have tides. This is after another repair was made, as Dave was saying, to try to protect this area from breaching. It was getting really close. So let's keep going. Here we're, leadership channel projects. Here we go. This is one of the original spoil islands. It's still there, although it is much smaller than it was before. And what we would advocate is let's take advantage of this already existing placement area and make it bigger. Use that for like a mid-channel, mid-curve placement location. We can put confined placement protection around that and put material in it. And it would hold it and keep it there. That material that was there before is now gone. And something is, 2022, let me look. This is an outbound north, it's probably an ebb tide, there's a north wind, you can see this effect right here. Stuff is flowing out of the bay. Those currents are coming this way and this way, the wind's blowing everything out. Something's happening right here, look at that trail. There's some erosion taking place right there, I guarantee you. And
So Raymond, I don't mean to interrupt, the Audubon Society is working with the Corps as we speak to make that a record and to reinforce it.
that's perfect. I think that's
I got an email today from the Audubon Society.
that's killing.
It's one of their recommendations.
Perfect. That's like 2 or 3 birds with one stone right there.
Yeah, they're gonna reinforce it and then continue it out to the east, northeast, and just let it grow like they're doing
Like
like
this.
this, Chester Island down south.
Right. But keep in mind, these currents can tell a little story if you look at some of these Google Earth shots. The current flowing around the causeway and this way, right out around this corner, it keeps going. And that's what's eating up all of this stuff right here. It's all gone now. And it's continuing to eat away. This is some of the local knowledge that we see, those of us who fish and spend time on the bay, and we notice this kind of stuff as we go out there, and we see things just disappearing, going away. I can't tell you how much I was so surprised coming around this corner one day, and I was planning on coming back here and fishing. And it was land. It was all covered, because it had been maybe 5 years since I went back there. But that was one of my favorite spots to go. This is an example of what we're talking about. This is the Houston Ship Channel. It's kind of much like ours, on a little bit bigger scale. They have about a 35-mile run from their jetties up into the Houston port. But here's one of their major placement areas, right here. All of this is confined. It didn't used to be. Prior to the deepening and widening, it wasn't confined. We used to run towboats up and down right here, and it was wide open bank. This is another placement area, but they're all confined. The material is not spreading all over the place. It costs them a lot of money to do this, but it's gonna serve several years of need for placement. That's a little better shot of that little spot right there. Blue water atoll, I guess is what they call it. They also did some other neat stuff in Houston. But that, you see how they did that? That material's not going anywhere. It's gonna stay right there for a long time. This is another thing that they did, kind of to, as a little add-on for the recreational boaters. Houston's got a ton of recreational boating craft. Back up this way in the Seabrook area, is the largest one location for pleasure craft, I think, in the country, or it's very close. They put this little, call it Redfish Island. This is hard surface riprap right here off of a pre-existing island right there next to the Houston Ship Channel. The channel is running right along here. But it's a good place for people to go picnic. They anchor their boats in here. It's protected from the ship draft change in the ship weight when they come through. And it's still very popular with the recreational boaters in the area. We could do some stuff like that too. We have a very, very similar setup. Let's keep going. Okay. Anybody know where this is? If you can read, there it is. Pascagoula. This is one of the early Google Earth shots of Pascagoula. And actually, it's kind of surprising because I remember Pascagoula in the 1970s, and it looked a whole lot different than it does right there. But it is changing. It is open. It is closing up. I will tell you this from my experience working along the Gulf Coast for the Intercoastal Canal Association. Every natural pass that is going from the intercoastal waterway or a bay system, it's with the natural pass going to the Gulf. If it's around that ship channel, it's closing. Ask anybody about what's happening at San Luis Pass up in Galveston, just west of Galveston. San Luis Pass is closing up big time, and so is Pascagoula. This is just the only way you get through here is right through there. This does not open. It's getting very narrow, and it's just going to keep. You can't even hardly get through these. You got to be really know what you're doing to get outboard through here these days. Unless you come around and go right through there, you're not going to get through. So keep that in mind. Our natural passes are closing up because of the amount of water that's flowing through our ship channels. And I guess our point is that please recognize this, Corps of Engineers. It's happening, and maybe we can take some load off the current that flows through that narrow jetty by protecting this and keeping some a higher volume of water flowing through there, because Mother Nature's going to close that sucker up. I just
They know that too.
Yeah.
The pilots made a request instead of widening the jetties.
Yeah.
Because if we widen the jetties, it's going to be too much volume coming through.
Right.
And not only that, it's going to destroy Bird Island and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We made the request to leave the jetties the same and come into Judson Pass. They're legally
So
clear.
you're definitely on the same page.
And Colonel Bale actually rode on the pilot, or not Colonel Bale, Colonel Blackman actually rode on the pilot boat with me.
Yeah.
And then we showed him Pascagoula.
Yeah.
So he knows that that's going to be the relief to help us with the current.
Yeah. Mother Nature's gonna have to have some help in keeping it open. This is Pascagoula today. This is Pascagoula in 1985. Today. The whole dynamics have changed there. That's getting narrower and narrower. And look at all that material that's accreting on that point. It's just closer, it's growing closer together all the time. But this one, I mean, is kind of a sleeper. This is Indian Point in 1990. Let me do this, I'm not going to do here. See the road? Those are the existing, those piling are out there now. And you can see some of the cabanas and all that maybe were over there. But this road, look how far the road is from the point. Look how far the road is from all of this. The point used to be over here. And now it's gone. I think David and them had to rebuild this after Harvey. They had to put some more material in here. They also put some rock riprap out here to protect it. But that point right there is going fast. It's just spreading really fast. And that's just one area that we could use a little help with material placement. We're getting close to the end of it. But a lot of people have asked me, well, you know, how does what we do here in Matagorda Bay impact the intercoastal waterway? And it's not something that you might think would be obvious to the most casual observer. But if you're out there running barges on the intercoastal over the last 20, 25 years, the current has increased in the intercoastal waterway significantly, especially when we have strong tides in the wintertime and we have a high movement of water out of the bay. Those currents become an issue. I took this picture some time ago, but the premise is that the ship channels are carrying more and more water into the bays, and a lot of the intercoastal waterway just acts like a natural pathway for that water to move in and out of the bay, and it does. And that's something else that I think we need to recognize and just be aware of it. Here's what happened. I took this picture several years ago, and admittedly it was taken during a flood. But this problem today, that slide is probably about 20 years old, 25 years old maybe. But today it has gotten worse. But look at this. This is the Brazos floodgates, and they're not locks. They're just floodgates. When they open up, it's about a 57-foot wide notch, and we push a 30-foot wide barge through it. That's about how wide that barge is. Okay. So here they come. Notice that there's 2 push boats on 1 barge. Okay, here he comes. He's making his approach. He's headed westbound. He's coming from Freeport in the background, right there, and he's headed toward Lavaca. Now watch what happens when he gets right between that wing wall, and it's about 50. It may be 70-something foot wide, but watch. Okay. Now, watch what happens to this guy right here. He's getting the heck out of there. That barge is submerging because of the current that was flowing west to east. It's going out the Brazos River, which is right behind that. In this case, it's right in front of the Brazos River is over here. He's fixing to go out into the Brazos River. So the Brazos River is trying to flow as hard as it can through that notch with an easterly flow. Look where he stopped right here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The reason that is like that, because Bernard River is shut up, so all that water's gotta flow to the Brazos to get out.
You're exactly right, Roy.
The Brazos, they just spent us, what, $2 million to redig the Menard?
Well,
And you can drive across it now.
when I was running the intercoastal canal at the time, and we saw that happening because the currents were getting so strong in the intercoastal. Everybody was having to trip the floodgates. And what that means is they can only take one barge at a time through the floodgates. They got to tie, if they've got 3 or 4, some may have 4 or 5 barges, they got to tie them all up back there on the other side before they ever get to the floodgate and come pick up and go 1, 2,
And when they
3.
shut them gates, you know where the water goes in?
When they close the gates?
Yeah. Goes to Sergeant.
Yeah, it does. It's like
Right out
plugging
that
up.
little cut we got.
And you'll notice it too, you'll notice it in the waterway. But the San Bernard River was in fact closing up back then. And we knew that it was hurting, it was making this a worse problem. So TxDOT ponied up the money, the Corps didn't help us at all. TxDOT hired a dredge to come dredge the San Bernard River. I think at that time, they spent about $500,000 dredging it, the San Bernard back out.
They got the littlest dredge they could find.
Yep, well, it was,
A little bitty thing.
yeah, well, we learned a whole lot more after that. So we got it open and we got it deeper. That lasted about 3 months. And it started filling back up again. And you could walk across it within the period of 4 or 5 months after we dredged it. We tried again.
But the river is completely closed up,
Yeah,
not 4 months after this.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of dollars spent.
yeah. The point that I would have the Corps consider is that when we do these things at the ship channels, they impact all the other openings up along the Gulf Coast between Freeport Ship Channel and Matagorda. There's an impact going on between Freeport and Galveston. There's an impact going on. San Luis filling up. All the rivers are filling up. And
Except for our cut there in Sergeant, it's getting bigger and wider and deeper.
Yep, yep,
Candy Creek,
yep.
well,
Yes.
not really Candy Creek, Mitchell's Cut.
Yep, yep.
Well, go ahead, I'm sorry. to interrupt.
Well, that's okay. It's just the point that I would like for people to take away from this, that there's a lot more to think about than just what's happening in Matagorda Bay or Nueces Bay or Galveston Bay. It impacts all, because that intercoastal runs parallel to the coast and it carries a lot of water. And it takes it right to the mouth of the San Bernard. If it can go that way, that's where it goes. So that's what's happening along the waterway. A final closing statement is, we're not against the project at all. But my daddy used to tell me this, and he was a steamship captain, and he was pretty damn rough on those boys. He said, boy, don't do anything if you can't do it right. If you can't do it right, don't even try to do it. If you're not gonna do it right, don't do it. And that's what my motto is, that we try to get the Corps to do this right for the long term. Well, I have been working with the Corps since 2000, very closely, from Panama City to Brownsville on all kinds of projects. And if I had to suggest to them one thing, I've worked with every Corps district on the Gulf, is that please listen to those people who are using the waterway, using the ship channel, and know the local area. And they have made so many mistakes because they didn't.
Oh, yeah.
The Colorado River diversion is a pretty good example. You know, and we were just so crazy, don't do that. You're gonna cut, they got a 200-foot wide, 25 or better foot deep Kingfisher dredged it straight out into Matagorda.
They ruined that end of the bay,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah, and they
It's a
made it
waste
really
of
That was
tough.
beneficial.
Yeah.
That's the reason that was beneficial.
They made it tough for us trying to get through Colorado locks too. By opening that thing up, it's just, man, the current goes like crazy. I could show you pictures of us having 2 boats trying to get through Colorado locks.
You know, we got areas down there on our beach where you could throw a rock and hit You can be standing on the edge of canal and throw a rock and hit the surf.
Yeah.
But they're gonna put a bunch of breakwaters down there where it don't even need it.
Well, that's the end of what we wanted to share with y'all tonight. I hope it's helped you understand a little about what we're trying to do, working with the pilots, Port, San Antonio Bay Partnership, Bill Balboa's here from Matagorda Bay Foundation. We're really trying to gather up together and have a discussion with the Corps about what we've learned over all of these years and try to make the project work for everybody.